Better yet be gone. Oh, that's going to be the next... If we need another title somewhere in this. But in the meantime, here's this.
Type 2 for diabetes has its own peculiar cell processes where a specific virus developed naturally, and it only had a few years in which to become something much larger. Now it is a pandemic. Everyone is vulnerable. Its name is diabetes. Patients develop blood sugar-related complications very early, along with casual weight loss that accelerated upon body heat, increasing metabolism with similar chemical reactions caused by their increasing body mass into some sort of modified supergrowth, causing diabetes to be more dexterous than it was before, dumping an even greater amount of sugar into the bloodstream, since more is consumed when diabetics also consume protein.
Oh, I clicked that send button twice.
Causing the cells to grow at super high rates, in which they always grow, but the cells now contain larger sections while stretching further with unlimited amounts of sugar. The proliferation is truly unworldly. Chemical reactions are occurring far faster than normal as primitive structures are being formed, but they are not properly formed based upon the body's failed attempt at completing its normal tasks. This causes blood pressure to drop whilst all the bodily fluids increase to compensate for such rapid chemical changes. This makes diabetics lighter than normal, since the whole process is kind of like plasticizing fat cells, which normally cannot happen, but even as they are turned into fat cells, their potential is multiplied by being able to function as they never can normally. Bone growth occurs at rates where they are able to warm up or run faster, but they don't become the bacteria which causes everything to decay. As you may have gleaned from some of the facts, so far they did not develop like this naturally. There are no documented instances of type 2 prior to the Industrial Revolution. Type 1 has existed for much longer, but no, its name is type 1 diabetes. As was stated above, it is more famous because of how it affects people who develop complete blindness, and yet somehow still sometimes manage to go on and have jobs, and somehow are given money, although none of this makes any sense whatsoever. You're not one of us. Violet. You said your name was Violet. Lily. Lily? The three emerge from their hiding place behind the gas station, where they text Brad about nothing, which has led them to sit down and watch the movie with Dr. Mayonnaise Joel before eventually becoming bored. Nobody seems to do anything in here, although that may not be so strange, except that everything makes sense, so who knows if they're lack of activity is due to people being afraid and too apathetic to move, since those most influential tend as a rule to live behind closed doors, not because they want to hide from society, but because few want to see them playing out their lives like they're stuck inside their own heads, which somehow makes perfect sense in high def with surround sound. They have become fascinated with the killing, since no ordinary person would ever dream of doing such a thing, and suddenly realize there must have been people back then who actually did do such things, although surely no one had ever thought of it, since no one would dare try something so insane yet predictable in order to start conversations. With all this in mind, and with nothing much else to do, Mr. Kaczynski claims there is a bounty on my head. Hey! Mr. Kaczynski claims there's a bounty on your head. There isn't. Have you seen Molly Ringwald? Have you seen Jack Nicholson? Haven't you seen these guys? I think at least one of them's pretty famous. Mr. Boylan. But you've done nothing wrong. She shudders. It happens automatically as she grimaces and looks up towards the picture window displaying a barely perceptible flick. Two men look down at her. She notices them through the blur as they lean against the window frame and glancing at her table before looking away. And walking over to where Mr. Kaczynski sits alone and orders himself her breakfast. He plops down across from her and says in hushed tones, "You know what I could do you for?" "What kind of doctor is Mayonnaise Joel?" inquiring minds want to know. This merely elicits a grunt from Mr. Kaczynski, who glances at her over a paper napkin filled with sopping wet hash browns and takes a sip of his coffee, pouring in some milk before reaching in his pocket for his tobacco packet and dipping out an old tea strap and rolling himself up a cigarette. He works this up until it glows reddish orange before moving out of view again and re-emerging with a lighter. He then lights up such a brief cloud before this shadows his face such that she cannot make out his features, which may be a mercy, or he may be trying to keep her from recognizing him, which raises a troubling thought. What if he is trying to make her recognize him? This is not the weirdest thing she's heard recently. So what's it like to live in 1985? Suddenly, she feels rather nervous sitting here with strangers so close, but plows on regardless, folding up her napkin and moving it all into the center of the table before leaning forward and taking a sip from her coffee. What's it like being a girl living in 1985? Another cough, this time stuffed down inside his coat collar as Mr. Kaczynski takes another drag on his cigarette. What's it like being her? He asks before looking over towards the other men who stand looking down at her with equally twinkling eyes. She rolls her eyes and looks back at him as he glances towards his friends, who nod and soon return to the diner, giving their seats to some passers-by who rush into the building like overworked mothers loading children from school buses who seem overwhelmed by what they see, even though Mr. Kaczynski lets them take over us. She sits back in surprise. What she has just seen has all come from behind the window, except for one still-lit cigarette, which appears almost too big for its hand. What observers she has seen have all stopped short before standing right next to her, giving her more glances than Mr. Kaczynski normally does, although these stares have not been made as easy to handle as usual. Mr. Kaczynski either sees or believes he has seen what he wants to see, because he leans forward, sitting taller than he has been all morning, until Mrs. Ringwald, Billy Ringwald's mother, glares at him. Until he sits back down, but he is grinning now as he moves out of the way so the Dr. Mayonnaise Joel can stand. She does not know what others have seen or even cares, but remains seated after shooting Mr. Kaczynski a warning glance so that he may walk around the table so that she may not lose him. Of course, this is an unnecessary precaution, since no one seems to notice him as the three men stand around the table looking down at her. She feels a nagging urge to say something, although she cannot detect any one particular thing she may have done wrong, except for possibly how she keeps very still as if seeing this all for the first time, and however unlikely this may be considering the amount of vintage clothing hanging about, it seems quite possible that she cannot recall exactly where the year is, although nothing appears but natural. She takes another sip from her coffee as Dr. Mayonnaise Joel stands beside her, looking very clever compared to when he had been surrounded by his friends. "You're not wearing a shirt." He says this rather unexpectedly, which lets his friends know that he is talking to them, even though they have not been standing nearby. She looks down briefly before looking up at him with a smile, which seems odd given what Dr. Mayonnaise Joel says next. She hears 3 pairs of shoes approaching as if moving through vast underground caverns until they stop right next to their front. She said, however, because Mr. Kaczynski moves towards the counter but whispers something in Mr. Boylan's ear, who leaves his seat to move through the restaurant past others seated at other tables, leaving empty chairs behind him. When he reaches the counter, he looks at Mr. Boylan, who returns with drinks for both himself and Dr. Mayonnaise. Joel before walking back to take his seat once again with Dr. Mayonnaise. Joel having a free drink, which is not exactly the thing that he had ordered for himself, as he must have done at some point, but Mr. Boylan probably had no idea about this and had meant to buy drinks for everyone else present who must be absent from this spot right now. Dr. Mayonnaise Joel is hardly paying attention to what goes on since he is more interested in talking to her, although his friends look upon him with smug interest. Good morning to you too, Doctor. As if you had any choice in doing so. The way Dr. Mayonnaise Joel says this suddenly grabs her attention, although it is mainly due to the surprise in his voice, since none of what preceded it should have meant so much, yet she sees him reach down towards the front of his trousers. Because you're always doing stuff like this, Dr. Mayonnaise Joel exclaims, yet when he lifts up his trouser legs a little, it becomes plain that he has mistaken it for a décolletage. There appears to be nothing underneath aside from plain blue Bermuda shorts which come up to meet a knee-length pair of socks, no doubt causing quite a scene once they reach the counter, but he is laughing now, although she cannot see what he finds so amusing, since these socks are meant to camouflage his shoes, or rather, this is how they were designed in 1985. They appear to be narrower and longer shoes, as if they were designed for backward swiveling feet like those of a clown, or perhaps a Victorian businessman, yet they are also softer, which allows him to grab hold of the backs of them before undoing the button and pulling them free of both socks and shoes in an instant, which allows Dr. Mayonnaise Joel to reveal another pair of plain blue Bermuda shorts in the same condition as the first two, although they are a bit shorter and are made from an almost fabric-like fabric, but different from clothes normally made of cotton. These shorts must be used during the summer, but will soon be placed in mothballs since they are almost too small for him, although it may be due to them being tattered due to Dr. Mayonnaise Joel being barefoot. It is difficult to imagine such a man being confused for a waiter, although it must be true given how his shoes keep disappearing and reappearing, or perhaps he composes his own music while wearing them. She reaches out a hand and catches hold of his bare toes. She watches his feet kick back and forth as if going about some business at hand, although his toes are curved, unlike pastel-colored rubber ones she has been coming across these days. Oh, why would anyone want to paint their feet so? The Ballad of Mayonnaise Joel. Gone, gonorrhea. Eyes will turn away because nobody can see you there but me. You're all I've got! I'm your only hope! Please don't do it! I won't tell anybody. You can tell everybody I'm your penis. All the burning inside you will be put out with your head covering. I'll let it go on forever. Just give me some of your blood in return. Are we all starving here or something? The empty chair looks up at Mr. Armfield as he stands there between the waitress and an older couple. A nearby table, although they look quite grand, they have no tissues in their hands and talk loudly. Not even babies can be heard crying, which is strange because now that they start focusing upon the people in uniform, adults will notice that many of them have either a baby or a toddler in tow, but not everyone is packing around a child in their arms, although this is probably not because they do not like children as much as they do towards other grown-ups. Perhaps they dislike each other unless they are having a date night at such an early hour. Yet why are people dressed in such odd clothes? Why do they seem so accustomed to being stared upon? How can Armfield keep his composure when he has seen Dr. Mayonnaise Joel many times before? Even if he called up everyone else who works here and asked them if they've seen what Armfield saw, there wouldn't be any witnesses since none of them have turned the television on over breakfast yet, but have they even eaten breakfast themselves? I don't know, sir. The waitress asks when he tilts his head towards her table. She looks entirely shocked, although she should not be since Mr. Armfield actually raised his eyebrows when he saw her pointing her empty tray at him before shifting it back towards the table where people are still eating. It seems that way, sir. I mean, why wouldn't we be? She tilts her head back towards the kitchen right as Armfield stands up with his arms out. Please, sir, stop. You'll hurt somebody. All eyes turn towards him as Armfield moves, rather abruptly, towards the nearest kitchenette, swinging his arms from side to side before grabbing hold of one of the pots with such force that it nearly shatters, but then also hitting against the chef's shoulder at the same time. Armfield then proceeds to hit Mr. Cook once again before grabbing hold of the chef's apron and pulling him right out from behind his countertops. It does not look good for Mr. Cook, for while he might not be much weaker than the rest of the staff, he appears much more vulnerable, since this is primarily because he is cooking specifically over fire, and although this might be fine during lunchtime when nobody is eating such heavy meals here in the morning, times have definitely changed. If even Armfield could do such things, then at least 2 people should be able to cook for the restaurant itself. Well, no wonder why nobody ever stops in here for breakfast if your staff are this useless. Armfield screams as he takes his place behind Mr. Cook, still holding onto his apron, which has barely any strength left to it. Come on now. Gotta be one food left over you could whip up into some eggs or something. Armfield motions towards the chef as Mr. Cook merely tries holding onto something like he would adorn up to pull himself to safety, or to even impale himself on if he had any more sharp knives. Laying about, it appears that nobody at all has prepared for breakfast this morning, although Armfield has no idea when everybody decided to eat last night anyway. You're lucky I'm hidden. You're lucky you found mayonnaise, Joel, and got me here. Armfield then gives him a swift kick up under the buttocks. Mr. Cook lets out a yelp before giving up and falling forward, where Armfield takes hold of him once again and tries spinning him around so that he ends up facing the way, which seems almost like it would be quite painful since Mr. Cook is already bleeding from several cuts, despite this being far too early for him to be bleeding already at such a point in time too. But even after all of that, Armfield still cannot seem to do anything right, where Mr. Cook ends up hitting him in the chin instead of spinning on his head right through his bones at the same time, where Mr. Cook instead hits himself right over his own spine. Only now is it possible to hear the horrid crunching sound and look upon Mr. Cook's lifeless eyes staring up into the morning sky. And even when Armfield performs an awful somersault backwards upon landing atop the train crab box, which was unceremoniously being used for carrying food earlier on today. However, it is now filled with most of the contents, including Mr. Cook's guts, to spill out onto the floor below Mr. Cook's feet, where arms and elbows are now reaching out to pick them up, though these are merely former arms which might have once been attached but are now quite useless even with proper appendages, for they will never be able to build body parts again like the ones where Armfield cannot help but grimace as he makes his way back up towards the rest of the restaurant floor, where he has all of his arms wrapped around Mr. Cook's guts to hold them back into place, while Mr. Cook is smart enough to remain quiet while taking great offense at being kicked around by Mr. Armfield, who simply scatters them before attempting to continue stomping upon them with his booty in an extremely violent fashion, where everybody else within turns their attention towards him. Again, Mr. Armfield gets up from the floor and looks down upon everyone else in disgust, though this makes him realize that almost nobody is even cleaning their own plates or dishes, which allows him to shake his head while putting his hands on his hips in disappointment, despite not caring at all what anyone else thinks about him. Again, guess someone else needs to go and do something about this then. For a moment, none of them move, though it is only a moment, but then finally, Mr. Food picks up a knife that appears bent out of shape, as well as a bit of broken glass sticking into his fingertips, before heading out through the dining room with several more knives and forks. 2 people across the distance from outside, as well as the other tables in the restaurant, immediately look towards the guy leaving as if nothing has happened. Before looking away again without even noticing that it happened, it just looks like Mr. Food made it happen before even knowing how many cuts they might have. Mr. Food had scarred their brains pretty thoroughly with those terrible scrap marks after all. Mr. Cook remains smashed in the back of a box, which no doubt will never open until Mr. Cook feels completely comfortable again after going over all of this with Noriko. Everyone else begins leaving one by one, with Leon leaving right after Noriko does, just in case she would be needed again later on today or tomorrow, or whenever today ends up ended up being again too, before calling over to Noriko from outside as she starts walking away towards the back again. I will return with supplies later on today, Noriko, Mr. Cook says before going into a coughing fit afterwards, and no doubt losing control of his own insides too at the same time. Even knowing this, Noriko does not turn back despite looking forward in curiosity towards Kunki, as he would never go running off into town like this if he had any idea what she would be doing out here, no matter how often she might have needed him before, even knowing that he came to help her, even though she was pale and sweaty as hell for hours on end before she finally revealed what she was actually doing at this point in time, even if he would never admit it right away and would immediately deny it, even if Noriko had already told him to. He would be right there for her whenever she needed her most, rather than bolting off into town on his own to try and be all big and strong like a fool when none of these people could ever possibly be ready for this kind of thing ever again.
Now with all the viscera on the floor.
Anyone knows how many people I healed? Just out of curiosity, Noriko asks aloud after passing several loops of electricity-laced wire connected together and surrounding Aiden's legs in case Mr. Food decides to do anything crazy on his own before finally reaching the back. 120. Probably even more by now, I expect, but I guess losing track of such things is somewhat natural after all, right? Kunki says, sounding a bit bored at this point in time while flipping through pages on his clipboard faster than it seems he can actually keep up. Well, tell me, how many for days at a time, if you can remember that far back without asking yourself if you should really get back here first, Kunki. Noriko says, replacing him in the book bag when she finally closes it again before picking up a needle lying on the ground towards another box with Earth's blood all over it for whatever reason, even though it is harder to open now than it was before, despite Noriko having her utmost confidence in her ability to do so any length of time ago. Just now, at the moment of opening it, a few more cuts start showing on her own skin, but nothing terribly serious. Obviously, something is going to happen soon, but it could take any number of days to happen while suffering all sorts of bodily harm in between, and sometimes not even being about to contribute to anything despite hours upon hours upon hours just sitting around.
They've been infecting yourself.
Noriko grabs a few blankets that fell out onto the ground since she could not open this box earlier, and could not have opened it worse off than this even had she tried for hours on end, since she did not want to do such a thing, since she knew how close this had been to being opened by someone freaking out about all these bloody blankets sticking out all around, scratching her.
Not literal bloody.
Now all around, even though she desperately wanted to reach inside for something inside, since it was almost like wanting to run into outer space, even though she knew there would be no oxygen or water or air left anywhere outside of Earth if she did that, no matter how tempting it seemed inside here. Aiden's leg is fine as his other cuts, regardless of how much she has come to see. But Kunki himself does not appear somehow very worried about being stabbed or being seriously beaten up now by Mr. Food after all that happened. Nor is he worried or concerned about the possibility of Noriko pushing him back right into the box again as she rips open this box herself while fidgeting with the needle already stuck through his foot and forcing herself to go still for a moment longer each time she lets herself make such a mistake before eventually opening the box wider through trial and error, so that when she actually reaches inside where Earth's blood is covering everything up in too much darkness for her vision, nothing stops her from pulling out a hairy shoe covered in dried blood, enough that whoever cut down the tree to provide this bloody shoe with Kunki Ooh, should I be worried? Even though I did promise Noriko that I would try and not tell anyone else what I saw here, at least until after I helped get rid of all of Earth's blood, and everyone that had been bitten by bugs was pretty much just fine without me doing anything at all. Noriko, even though you have gone way past such hellish times like this, Conky, even though you have struggled way too hard this whole series of events to be allowed some treats after such long periods of nothing but struggling. Noriko, even though you ought to be saying that about these boots, no matter how much they smell like Earth's blood is spreading all around them, since you never wanted Earth's blood all over your own shoes in the first place and screamed bloody murder every time someone else got covered by such blood anyway. You're lucky I am not throwing both shoes away right now. Kunky! Most certainly a total mystery how we managed to get this far without getting rid of all that bloody shoe smell. Now, why not throw them out if they are not bothering you as much as that bloody bag does? Maybe then you can take out a lot more goods inside too. Noriko, maybe something even better than that bloody bag. Noriko, if Kunky wants something so bad to come out of this box, he should apply himself so hard to whatever it is he actually hopes for inside that he at least finishes opening whatever it is he takes out sooner than later. Kunky, now! Patience is key if you wish to achieve everything you have ever wanted. Noriko, everything I had ever wanted? You're supposed to be taking care of everything around here. Kunky, it's your job to take care of everything around here. So stop stalling. Kunky, true enough. The more patience, the greater the reward. Anyway, hurry up and open this box before you accidentally bite your tongue, Noriko. That blood flowing all around is harder to open than anything we have ever had to deal with so far. Noriko, unfortunate your pale frozen fingers didn't get you any shoes back then in the very first place. Kunky, but what comes next? What reward for all our hard work here? Noriko, honestly, I cannot help but wonder. Kunky, do you feel the same way I do about this barefoot outside our window trying to look in? All alone. A perfect target, bare feet dangling freely because of how easily Earth's blood can be pulled out of the branches here in our room. A clean, chilled zone covered by such a practical and useful thing that we often found ourselves wondering if we had forgotten to neatly open it one day, no matter how we had just discovered it sitting nearby on the floor. Why does the blood never leave this certain spot, no matter how many times we have been opening and closing this window? This window has never seemed so important to us as it has now. Why are we still finding bloody sheets stuck to these curtains every single time we open them too, in spite of how friendly the line of sharp teeth sat patiently waiting for something else to come their way on their own? While not bothering us at all by ourselves like they did back when everyone still carried on with their normal lives out there. Why did we start being reminded by the blood on the curtain how our late mother continued being eaten alive back there whenever we would open the window seriously without inhibitions, just like we did back then, because we both just got used to seeing a curtain covered in red still after putting it back up on its hook every single day and night? Why did we stop caring about the blood on the curtain when we had gotten used to seeing it being slowly dragged down over time and in only one direction? While we kept doing what we often did before seeing this blood almost everywhere else too, after nothing kept coming up the next day and night, no matter how badly we looked for it? What had the curtain even done to become a permanent victim of such a blood wrath against anyone's bare feet that walked by her head each day long after turning her toes into bloody stumps? Our mother didn't have that curtain then, though. We saw her feet near the base of the window then, too. She did not opt to barefoot inside. Sisyphus, Having contracted syphilis, being visited by his doctor who recommends he stay indoors for at least a month. As Sisyphus shrugs off the suggestion, saying he'll go like everyone else, God steps in and gives Sisyphus a big grin. God, nice take on things. Sisyphus, do you like killing people? I know you don't consider yourself a killer, but anything that gets you sick can easily be considered killing, at least with me. Sisyphus, yeah, sure, whatever. Your gut so. I'll just stay indoors until I die because it'll all work out. Fair enough. God. Okay then. Guess if you really want to go out there, you'll need pants because dark type cloth. Like none other out there can keep your socks from getting stained, so go change. Come back when you're ready. If anyone shows up trying to snag me, make them feel funny down there if it suits you. That's how it works. Sisyphus. Sisyphus. Takes what? A few hours? God. Less than that. Sisyphus. No sweat. I really just want to kill some people because I'm sick, but thank God nobody's willing to talk me out of this today. It's gonna be weird when it comes time for me to tuck in my shirt, but I guess that comes with finally getting good enough at murdering, I guess. God, get lost before I get mad at you for jinxing me with how good things are going out there right now, Sisyphus. Take care of yourself and go live up ahead. Physician. All right. Sisyphus is quite sick, and I am not really helping him as much as he wishes because he really wants to kill people instead of moping around here for a while, but he really is sick, which is why he wants to go about on his own rather than be dealt with by others. But personally, I do not have any problem with her ruling over us from her hospital bed if she needs some time off from working thus far, which is why she will be going about on her own while he still needs something to have. For knowing on in his free time, since he is helpless here, as I will only lend him my hands to see him through into each new day of life until he gets better, because this is the only real reason any of us humans are here anyway that I have noticed, as I am a doctor, so him being sick and getting better is not even close to being among my sentences in life, since not a single person has ever gotten better in my eyes no matter what they went through, whereas every single one of them get better at crawling back around and killing as soon as they are able to and over again, which is the most pathetic thing about life according to me as a physician. Sisyphus. Damn. It's a rule then, huh? No matter what one does, there's something else that just comes up so that we all keep doing over and over what we eventually get tired of doing in the same exact way, no matter what level of horniness we're currently experiencing, thanks to the cycle of madness that seems never ending. Thanks, Doc. You too, God. You guys are great. And I think I know what to do next now. How's this for a fashion statement? My clothing doesn't make me feel like a monster anymore, so fuck this world and find something else to do with me. This is awful. Everyone's gonna laugh at me. Guys, gods of the world have seen me naked 3 fucking times. What am I supposed to do now as an angry-ass person for life? What am I supposed to do? Physician. I think I'm going to retire from my profession soon in light of how little my patients are actually getting much better outside. It's a shame, but honestly, I don't feel like helping people anymore at all after all this time, seeing them killing each other left and right. I was hoping everything would get better someday, but never did. Isn't this odd considering how smart Sisyphus claims I am when I'm not around and telling him what to do? Someone really should have taught him how to take direction somehow. Maybe there will be a better time for everyone eventually, but that won't be soon, no matter what one thinks. Is this our loss or our gain? Does it even matter anymore? Let us hope one day mankind will get its shit together at long last. God, you've thought a lot more along the lines of how things should have been the whole time than I ever did. Doc, way to go. Huh? What's wrong with you? Are you stupid or something? Why will you ever learn? Do you think humans are stupid? Don't treat someone as a pet. Learn the difference between people and pets, or they're going to end up being killed by dogs after washing themselves clean for all the dirty deeds they did so that they can live again in the doghouse after dying just once in their life. Dogs rule humans now as such. Don't make the same mistake again so that you never suffer the same fate. Physician, shut the hell up! God, quickly then, start licking yourself clean as you profess you are, but without using any kind of soap for once, because humans don't get clean if they lick themselves clean with soap only, and there are no dogs around you right now doing these same things either, so everything should be pretty much up to snuff for once now. Shouldn't it? What are you waiting for then? Let's do some laundry, Doc. Physician, fuck off, God. God. Why such hostility? Aren't you sick yet? You're even worse off than Sisyphus for doing such a shitty job taking care of your own body. I think it's time you got better soon. Physician, go talk to the death god and ask him why death is coming for people all around me so much sooner than what is normally. No, it's impossible, even for a death god. He's dead already, so he can't possibly be with us in person anymore. Am I wrong? Am I not supposed to be able to see anyone who dies anymore who can offer me advice if they see the death god once already? Am I remembering stuff wrong? Oh, wait, that's it. That's why I know damn well how to stay alive better than all those sadistic bastards who died. Exactly this. Fuck their fucking advice, and fuck their advice ever since before they died already. I'm better than them, or else they'd all still be alive right now. God, you really are quite an ass wanting to be on top forever like that, aren't you? But no matter how much of an ass you may be, you can't change reality forever. Sisyphus, what am I doing? Why do I feel like crying even though I got nothing to cry about now that my sad, pathetic life is finally over, since it has been washed clean of everything that gave it any meaning whatsoever when God lifted a finger just the other day, knowing well there was nothing stopping him to do so, only without considering whether or not I took his instructions well, having been thwarted in my schemes every single time by all kinds of obstacles brought about by myself in some way. Again, anyway, but who gives a shit anymore? Why should there not also be an everything as well, if only by declaring it all besides null and void, together with that crap used by idiots, myself being so very full of myself to make up such a terribly stupid name for this deliberately postulated nonsense existence I have fortunately ended up dropping upon, climbing up what turned out to be nothing but more dirt only, which had absolutely nothing whatsoever even remotely resembling the worthwhile goal even considered ever by anyone else, and sure enough that stuff about a ton of boulders rolling endlessly down from the hill wall being always shoved up again yet unable to return back down becomes more apparent by the days. Will go die 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 die. Sisyphus.
Coda.
Even if one day I get reincarnated, it won't have any meaning anymore. After having been made complete by this mighty annihilation, God will surely be doing against me, since this rightfully feels just like dying to me. Anyway, why should there even be any need to reincarnate at all if this final act I'm committing at long last serves as a reminder of how exceedingly unmeaningful life is all around and how false my whole life has ever been. Thanks anyway, God. Congratulations on finally ensuring that this mountain will remain a immobile forevermore. Thanks, no need for anything else anyway. How about those kidneys for my wife and kids? Did they get installed yet? Why does it still feel so shitty without a sense of anything at all? No real pain. Thanks anyway. If I did not get it done instead, it will turn out fun. Anyhow, in the end, things always work out. No, not really. Just forget about my wife and kids, please. Oh, and don't forget to send over some coffins too, because it would be a surprise attack on them too.
Perfect.